upright position as Tony shows us here. The ball is then rolled to the side and the keeper collapses to that side with the hands leading to take the ball. The ball is then thrown back to the coach and the throw is used to help pump the goalkeeper back up into the kneeling position. Because Tony technically is very good, you can see as he rolls and pumps the ball back to the coach, he's also forcing the coach to move backwards because, as a goalkeeper, he's attacking the ball. He's not actually diving sideways, he's diving slightly forwards. Some coaches recommend this as a starting position to learn side diving. But as you see here, when you roll on the side to take the ball, you're in effect simulating a falling backwards save instead of a side diving body position. It might look okay, but our recommendation would be to start in a kneeling position, not in a sitting position. So have a look at Caitlin doing the same thing that Tony was doing, and you can see her side diving techniques are very good. Have a careful look too at her lower leg and upper leg. Lower leg trailing comfortably, upper leg and knee pulled in towards the ball, and then pumped back to facilitate returning to the upright position. What we would suggest to Caitlin is that she lifts her head a little more than she's doing here to prevent the tendency for her to begin to roll onto her back. The progression from the pendulum roll, as we've called this activity, is to go into the squat thrust practice. Tony here starts in a crouched position, which means it's not going to be a high dive or a body rattling dive, which for a goalkeeper learning the diving rudiments will present a much gentler way of doing it. Some coaches even start in a sandpit to make a more comfortable landing surface while learning the diving techniques. Both for the pendulum roll and with the squat thrust, our recommendation would be no more than 6 shots and then a rest, and for younger goalkeepers, not as many as 6. 3 or 4 will be ample. We're developing good techniques, not endurance diving. And once more, notice how Tony attacks the ball and in doing so forces the coach back. Same with Caitlin. But she's not diving quite as aggressively forward as Tony was, but you can see she is diving slightly forward and beginning to develop good technique. Shadow dancing is when one person in effect becomes the ball and the mirror. Whatever the ball mirror does, the goalkeeper must replicate almost instantly. This is very much connected to being alert and alive, reacting, not anticipating. And as you see, the requirement for the goalkeeper is, if the ball mirror goes backwards, the keeper goes forwards. If the ball mirror goes to the right, the keeper goes to the left. So everything is as a mirror would reflect. As you can see from Caitlin's face, it's a bit of fun, with the coach trying to wrong foot the goalkeeper by quick changes of direction. Coach David works with 2 goalkeepers, Tony and Kevin. The biggest single question is, can the coach sustain the effort, or will he or she tire long before the goalkeepers? Remember, the endurance requirements of goalkeeping are not those of a midfield player. The endurance we're looking for is the ability to stay alert and alive and dancing for 90 minutes of a game. Goalkeepers will not cover the 8 to 10 miles that a midfield player could well have to run during the course of a game. So the maximum length of the shadow dance should be no more than 12 minutes. Younger goalkeepers will have to be progressed to the 12-minute mark over a period of time. From the shadow dancing comes shadow goalkeeping. Here the coach, the mirror, asks the goalkeepers to switch the engines on to start with so that they're alert and alive and dancing. Then the coach indicates the imaginary shot that's on its way. A point down to the ground, left or right, requires a very quick collapsing save. One further away towards what would be the corner of a net requires a glide and a dive. The arm extended right or left is a shot that's hit towards the inside of the post, 3 to 4 feet off the ground. And finally, into the upper 90 with the hand pointing to the top corner. Always in shadow goalkeeping, the assumption is that the save is only half complete. It's touched onto a post or a bar, so the requirement then is for the keeper to get back into the fully recovered position as quickly as possible. So good side diving is required, and so is good recovery. Keepers should always try to avoid swinging their legs over, because as they do so, as we saw with Kevin, you end up with a victory roll and not in a position to recover back to the feet.
It's that collapsing save.
So here's the coach explain to Caitlin just what the dives are that are required. Initially it may be a little confusing because keepers have to act in the opposite direction. Coaches should always insist on a quick recovery back onto the feet. Once more, goalkeeping is not an endurance diving event. We don't need to be making 10 or 20 dives within 45 seconds. It just doesn't happen in a game. No goalkeeper has ever been carried off the field physically exhausted. Mentally, maybe. So we're not training goalkeepers to make multiple dives. Chances are, in a game, they may only be required to make 5 or 10 diving saves in the whole of the game, and seldom will they be in multiples of 2 or 3. The next practice is with rotating goalkeepers. As one makes a save, the other one comes forward to take his place. Because we have an extra coach here, we can add another dimension to the practice by insisting that after they've made the save, they use a javelin-type baseball throw into the chest of Coach David. The serving coach replicates different shots by throws or by kicks, but always insists on high-quality work. Even in a case like this with Kevin, where he fails to stop the shot, at least the effort's been made. When the ball is rolled short, the goalkeeper attacks the ball. Always match quality practice.
Hold on. Good. Get David. The throw.
The next practice is the one we've called our Big Brother practice. Big brothers like to kick on the goalkeeper. Little brother or little sister is the one who ends up in goal.
Hold on. Okay, get back again.
In the first case with Caitlin, we're trying to measure the service and want to challenge her without beating her too often.
Here's an awkward one coming up.
Whereas with Coach David and Kevin, we've increased the tempo and increased the challenge of the shots. In this case, the game rule is that Coach David cannot take the ball inside the area, but all of his shots must be hit from 18 yards or more. If Kevin makes an outstanding save, he scores a goal. If David beats him and puts the ball in the back of the net, he also scores a goal. So that's the game. Fortunately for David, he's also the referee, so he decides whether Kevin's got an outstanding save or not. Here again, in this game, the requirement is for match quality practice, no sloppy work. For instance, here Kevin watches the ball go onto the post, and this is not acceptable. He has to try for every ball, as he does on the next shot, which hits the post, but he had it pretty well covered if the shot was just inside the post. In our next practice, utilising one-on-one situations, diving at the feet, we're working with a crisscross type of organisation using 3 keepers, one of which is Coach David. The simple rule here is the incoming attacker is asked to be sensible. We're here to encourage the goalkeeper to get comfortable with this very important technique, and therefore the attacker takes evasive action if there's any likelihood of any physical challenge. Of course, when we get into a game, those guarantees are no longer provided. And as we'll see later in the through ball practice, we need to replicate those situations, but only when the goalkeepers have become proficient in these very challenging situations. Just look once again at Kevin coming out to take the ball at the feet of the incoming player. Notice that Kevin is coming on the line from the inside out, so that when he eventually goes down, his hands and head are towards the ball and his body is across the goal. He comes out fast and low, and in these circumstances, instead of staying on his feet as long as possible, begins to slide down to collect or block the ball earlier rather than later. This eliminates any chance of the ball running underneath the body. Notice again that the hands are the leaders, certainly not the head, and not the legs, as the legs are likely to kick the ball away if they're leading and so provide opportunities for the opposition to score on the rebound. As well, at the moment of receiving the ball or blocking the ball, the head is well behind the hands. The hands are the protectors as well as the collectors. Notice that David quite rightly takes evasive action by hurdling well over the goalkeeper. If the technique is right, as Kevin's is here, the attacker is much more likely to get hurt than the goalkeeper, and therefore is wise to get out of the way. The biggest danger for the goalkeeper is the head. That's why the hands are the leaders, and that's why the hands are also the protectors. Look at it again as Kevin comes in, this time from the other side. As David makes his run towards the ball, we see Kevin coming out on that inside line, low, going down early. He can't run straight towards the ball, otherwise he cannot get his side dive in. See how the head is well back and the hands well forward. And having received the ball, the keeper uses the ball and the hands to hide the head behind. These one-on-ones are amongst the most dangerous situations in the game for goalkeepers and therefore need to be practiced. First without any real opposition and then in team circumstances. Again with caution to avoid unnecessary injuries. Once the technique is perfected with the hands as the protectors and the collectors, the risk of danger is minimal. But only if the goalkeepers use the correct techniques. We'll see more of these situations in the second part of the video. Another simple practice but a very appropriate one for goalkeeping is the salmon leap. As we see in the pro footage, even at the very highest level, goalkeepers will occasionally get themselves caught too far out from goal. We will see in some of the analysis of our top-class goalkeepers later in the video that keepers have to be very careful about just how far they come off the line in order to narrow the angle. As we see here with a potential shot about to be taken, the keeper is 5 yards out of his goal and the forward player recognises this and plays a skillful chip shot right under the crossbar. These are very difficult shots to deal with as the goalkeeper inevitably is going backwards. It's the only way he can get to the ball, and getting a deflection to go up and wide from this body posture is extremely difficult. And even though the goalkeeper manages to get his hand to it, he can't get enough on the ball to push it up and over the crossbar. Sometimes keepers get caught in these positions through no fault of their own. They come out to narrow the angle at the right distance, but a deflection from a challenging defender puts the ball up and over the goalkeeper. So that is why we've set up our salmon leap practice. The coach is around the penalty spot, the goalkeeper's on the 6-yard line. The ball is then pitched over the goalkeeper to practice making that recovery save. We need to be careful the goalkeeper doesn't anticipate too early and move backwards too early, even though he knows quite clearly what's going on. So you can see these circumstances do need practicing. It's not an easy save. And if we look at it from a different angle, we'll see just what Kevin has to do to complete that save. In fact, when he throws the ball out from here, guess what? It was a goal. Of course, he wouldn't be doing that in the game, but then we don't want him to do it in practice either. And in this next instance, because these balls are extremely difficult to judge, Kevin misjudges it completely and it drops in the back of the net without him making any real effort. But here he is improving, and on his final effort makes a great recovery, a good decision and perfect execution, using what we would term the wrong hand to tip the ball over the bar. Again, because of the circumstances, the wrong hand save, which actually is of course the right hand in these circumstances, guides the ball over the crossbar as the keeper dives and falls back into the goal. The graphic shows the setup for this practice between two goalkeepers. Two goals are improvised with cones or flags 20 yards apart. If there are 3 goalkeepers, one rests while the other 2 work and a rotation is made every 2 minutes. With 4 goalkeepers set out 2 separate areas. Initially, the goalkeepers start by rolling and throwing balls at one another, testing each other, but initially not trying to score. It's again very important that the keepers replicate match standards while they're practicing. It could be that goalkeepers sometimes have to practice on their own or with an assistant coach. If they are on their own, with the team coach running a field player practice, the team coach should keep a sharp eye on the goalkeepers to ensure that good standards are being maintained. One of the great advantages of improvising goals is that the goalkeepers can go to the best area of the field where the grass is lush and the landing area is soft and conducive to good goalkeeping. Eventually, as the practice develops and the goalkeepers get warmed up, the type of service is changed to challenge the goalkeepers to a greater extent. So kicks and throws to the side of the goalkeeper, as we see with this diving effort here, will challenge the keepers much more than the initial warm-up stage. If the practice is supervised by the coach or an assistant coach, He always encourages the goalkeepers to be alert and alive, keep the motor running, and do everything possible to make the save and recovery save if the ball is not collected the first time. As we see with our goalkeepers here, they're still going through the warm-up phase and are not yet thoroughly challenging one another with drop kicks and hard throws to the corner. That will come later. As we see with the dive here, this is the type of challenge that is needed. But obviously there's some work required on our keeper's technique, as he gets his upper and lower legs wrong and rolls onto his back, exposing the ball. This is the place to make those corrections. And as we see with the pro footage, a simple save, such as the ones they've been performing in the 2-goal practice, do occur in the game and have to be executed correctly. Here, David and Kevin are working on their throwing techniques. This is something goalkeepers can do on their own if they have a rebound wall, or with a friend, even if the friend is not a goalkeeper. The field-playing friend would try to hit the target with his or her feet. Because that's more difficult than hitting the target with the throw, the distances should be adjusted accordingly. A little further away for the thrower, a little nearer for the kicker. What you need to do as a keeper or as a coach is to make the practice challenging, not too easy nor too difficult. With Kevin and David here, the distances are about right, and the one cone target makes it quite difficult. But they are adult keepers and quite happy to be challenged, even with a limited success rate. The initial rolling ball is the type of throw you'd make having received the ball and then quickly rolling it to the side of the penalty area for one of your teammates who is unmarked. As we change the technique to what is sometimes termed the baseball throw or the javelin throw, you can see that technique is much more difficult. It's obviously something that David is not used to. Yet this throw is an excellent way of quickly changing defence to attack. The goalkeeper catches the ball from the left and then immediately switches out to a defender, breaking away on the right. The throw needs to go right into the feet of the player, and this is what we are simulating here with this particular practice. A further development is to go much further away from one another, 30 to 40 yards apart, and throw from one square to another, as we will see in the goal kick practice a little bit later. So in the pro footage, this is where our keeper turns defence into attack, catches the ball and immediately looks forward. Why would you throw it short when you're able to go long and create an opportunity of a goal? This magnificent throw, with an unusual sidearm technique, provides the assist for the goal. So short throwing and long throwing need to be practiced often. In the graphic, we're showing 3 goalkeepers kicking the ball from the ground to one another 30, 40, maybe even as many as 50 yards in between each square. This needn't necessarily just be a goalkeeping practice, because field players need to be able to kick accurately over long distances and to be able to control the ball as it comes into their area of the field. With our 2 goalkeepers here, our square pegs practice involves only 2 squares. The idea is to score a point by kicking from one square to drop the ball into the other square. However, the receiving player or goalkeeper can also score a point by controlling that ball with one touch and playing the return pass with the other, as this simulates the type of situations we're going to find in the game with the new back pass rule. Taking one's own goal kicks is always the preference for a goalkeeper. Pulling a player back to take your goal kicks puts the team at a disadvantage, as it keeps the opposition on side. So it's very important to work on kicking a dead ball. Of course, the younger a keeper is, the less able they are to get great distances, and it may be worth getting a long kicking back defender to take the goal kicks. But sooner rather than later, goalkeepers should be taking their own goal kicks. And as you can see, as our 2 goalkeepers practice, they get better each time. In the pro footage, a long goal kick travels right into the other half of the field of play. Then comes some very skillful attacking play as the ball is flicked on by the red attacker, and then a little back heel controlling flick by the foremost red attacker sets up the goal. But it has to be remembered that the initial assist came from the goal kick. So we've spent quite some time on practices that goalkeepers can do with a friend or outside the team practice with the supervision of a coach or an assistant coach. There will never be enough time to practice everything you want, so every opportunity should be taken, both at the team practice and maybe in the evenings or at the weekend with a friend, to continue to hone up your goalkeeping skills. In the second part of the video, we'll look much more at team goalkeeping practice situations and how the coach can integrate the goalkeeper into the team practice. Goalkeepers can't set these practices up themselves, but they can certainly ask the coach to try to involve the type of practices we're showing in part 2 as part of the team practice schedule. So finally, let's look at some no-nos for goalkeepers. As we've said in the key principles, that staying alert and alive and maintaining concentration at all times is very important. Kevin here has got himself distracted by his friend at the goalpost and turns his back on play. Not good. In the second blooper, Kevin's got it all wrong again, deliberately so for the benefit of our cameras. But he shows what not to do when dealing with this ball that is bouncing close to the body. You can see how the hands are all wrong. They're not going to the ball, and that puts the body wrong as well. There was a joke about a goalkeeper in London, England, who had such a bad time in goal with this type of situation that he went out into the streets of London and threw himself in front of a double-decker bus. But the bus passed under him. This time, Kevin shows what happens when you lean back and fall back, and instead of getting those hands behind the ball and slightly on top of the ball, allows the ball to deflect upwards, backwards, and into the net. Another definite no-no. Better to exaggerate the hands over the top of the ball, so if the ball does come out of the hands, it drops downwards in front of the goalkeeper. Or if it can't be held, to be deflected over the crossbar. Hands, knees, and bumps-a-daisy goes the ball. No goalkeeper wants to get himself anchored to the ground with both knees down. It means that if the hands don't work, the ball will bounce off the bony knee surface. Worse, if the ball takes a skip to the side, it's very difficult to adjust your position when locked to the ground by your knees and legs. Kevin's having a little laugh here, which he's entitled to because this isn't the way he would normally keep goal. Another knee drop here as Kevin sinks to the ground on his right knee, and by doing so disables himself from being able to get his body behind the ball. If his hands don't work, as they don't here, there is no covering surface to stop that ball entering the back of the net. Another knee drop here as he puts his knee down on the ground, but fortunately is able to recover and secure the ball. But in game circumstances, he might not have had any time to make that recovery. Another classic blooper here, and it's entirely down to the hands. As Kevin goes down with the hands in a scooping position, you can see it's impossible to put another surface behind the hands. To prevent this happening, what has to be done here is that the goalkeeper must collapse and get the hands turned outwards to the ball, and in doing so, forcing the body to be right behind the hands as secondary cover. You might say it's not good to look at these mistakes being made, but they are common mistakes. And if you can see them, and maybe even recognise yourself or your goalkeeper as someone who might make those mistakes, we can correct them and return to the 10 principles of goalkeeping to avoid these bloopers happening in a game. The belly flop we've seen before. You can see here that as Kevin goes down, his legs are wrong, his hands are wrong, his goalkeeping is wrong, and he is down and probably out for the next play. And finally, Kevin once again talking to his friend, but this time receiving a telephone call from his girlfriend. Not exactly the way we want Kevin to do his goalkeeping. And of course, Kevin is just fooling around to let you people out there know this is not what you do when you're playing in goal. In tape 2, we'll look at some of the critical decisions that need to be made as the goalkeeper comes off the line to catch a cross or to deal with a one-on-one through ball. But there are also critical decisions to be made around the 6-yard box. In this instance, as Kevin goes down to a low shot, first of all, can he get both hands to it? And if not, how and to where does he deflect the ball? The heel of the palm of the hand gives a good deflecting surface, and of course the ball should be deflected away from danger, either to the side of the goal or out for a corner kick. Another decision on a shot to the side requiring a dive is, can the keeper get both hands to the ball and hold on to that ball comfortably? Sometimes it's not comfortable to do that, and so it's better to deflect the ball to safety, as Kevin does here. Much better to be safe than sorry. Same with the high balls, which are going just under the bar. Can you jump high enough to be able to get both hands to catch it, or is it a better decision to play for safety and push the ball over the bar, either with one hand as Kevin does here, or with two hands if the ball is a little lower? With the ball being crossed in the unopposed situation we see here, it is quite different to the one that most goalkeepers will face in a game. In a game there will be cooperating players and opposing players, and the decision as to whether to catch, whether to punch, or whether or not to even come for the ball at all will be made relative to the type of cross and the positions of the players in and around the penalty area. So in practice, the goalkeeper must keep in mind and even visualise the fact that there will be players helping and impeding in game situations. We'll see some of that in part 2. As Kevin captures the ball here, he has to move back to make the catch, and as a result he is somewhat exposed to an opponent charging in. The sooner he can secure that ball and put it in the bank and then present his shoulder to an incoming challenge, the better he will be. In this case, with the ball a little too high to make a comfortable catch, Kevin elects to deflect it beyond the far post to safety. And on the final cross, we can see Kevin making a very good catch, but he's really stretching. As he catches the ball, he would be vulnerable to the challenge of an opponent if this was a game situation. Kevin now practices his punching technique when in his mind's eye he's under heavy challenge, and to catch the ball would run the risk of being hit and maybe dropping the ball. So this is just punching technique practice, but it's very valuable. In team practices on crossing, a more realistic situation will be presented. And finally the cross where Kevin has to retreat to the back post. He makes the catch, hides the ball away, crunches up into a safe position and is ready to withstand any challenge. One of the 10 key principles of goalkeeping is staying on your feet as long as possible. Committing oneself to a dive or anticipating what an opposing striker is going to do often makes it easier for the opponent.
Set.
The objective for a goalkeeper is to do everything possible to get within the line of the flight of the ball, particularly on a shot on goal. Crosses, of course, present a different situation, although the requirements are quite similar. The lines that the goalkeeper is trying to get inside are those drawn from the outside of the body. If a keeper is able to arrive within the line of flight and in a composed way, there should be no danger to the goal, providing the keeper is not too small or the goal too tall. Any ball arriving at a comfortable height above the head or down to the knees should be relatively easy to collect and to catch and hug, unless it's being struck with such power from point-blank range where there only might be time to beat the ball away. The balls which require the keeper to stretch well above the head may be too risky to catch, but can be relatively easily deflected to safety over the crossbar. The balls below the knees are more of a problem, and in order to secure the ball, may need a forward dive onto the arms and knees to ensure the correct body shape and so enable the ball to be tucked safely away upon the completion of the save. Balls which would pass outside of the body lines, in spite of alert footwork to try to get on an inside line, require a dive, mainly to get the hands right and to catch or deflect the shot. So to finish with, before we go to the second tape, let's have a look once more at our pro goalkeepers in action, just reinforcing all the things we've been looking at and talking about during part 1 of this video.